Welcome to Menon Thoughts, where technology, life, and growth comes together with purpose. I'm Govind Menon, here to walk with you through the challenges of your career and times of healing. So this video. This is basically part 4 of our Agile series. This is going to be how to plan and build a project using Agile, right? Okay. So we did 3 videos already, and we have uploaded it on the channel. First being why Agile, what is Agile, how it works, why it fails. The second one was how to build an Agile team. The third one was on how you can be a good Agile team member. I'll put up a playlist link somewhere here at the top, right? So that you can click on that and go and view the videos, right? All the videos. If you have not seen that, part 1, part 2, and part 3, if you go and watch that, it will be easier for you to understand what I'm going to talk about in part 4. You can see it after seeing this video also. But anyway, so towards the end of the video also we'll leave the links so that you can go back and see that. Today we are going to, since we have talked about all those 3 topics, now we're going to talk about how do you use Agile effectively in your project. So when you use it effectively in a project means not just building the team, not just the stand-ups, not just the retrospectives, not the sprint and all that stuff. We are going to talk about how to build an entire project right from starting till the end using the Agile's methods and processes, and how you set it up for success. So let's get started with that. So we'll start with why, right? So every Agile project or any project, whether you're using Agile or not, you should always start with the factors saying, why am I building this particular project? Of course, you'll have a SOW, SRS, and probably your bosses have said this is what the project is. But even before you start planning a sprint or set up the Jira or anything else, the first step as a team which is going to build Agile project or other project, you should be asking this question, why are we building this? Clarify the problems, clarify the pain points, and the most important thing, what is the value you are going to deliver in this particular project? Now, value is not something which is in terms of the cost, that is your company, your marketing guys to look at. Value as in the usability for the end user, right? What problem are you solving for him? What are the current pain points that they have in their current process or workflow? And what is the value add you are giving? So there could be 2 ways of starting a project, right? I mean, 2 reasons why you are starting a project. The first reason is basically it's a new project, new company, they want a software, you are building it. In that scenario, you have to look at the problem that you're going to solve and the pain points you're going to solve in the workflow, because every software that you build for any organization, it is solving a pain point for that particular user. That's why the software exists, right? So for example, even if you're building ETL tool, there are tons of ETL tools that are there. Even if you're building an e-commerce application, there are tons of e-commerce applications that are there. There are a lot of platforms where you can build a e-commerce application on a click of a button. But if you are building one right from scratch, obviously those platforms have not worked for them. Hence, they are coming to you to build a new site, right? Or they're coming to you because they are seeing some value. So the first step is always identifying the problem that you're going to solve. The second is the pain point. And if it's a rewrite or if it is a upgrade to that particular software which they already had, then what is the value that you are adding in this project development, or even if it's a product development? You can probably use techniques like lean canvas, empathy mapping, stakeholder interviews. probably if you use these three concepts, you will get an output which is basically a shared understanding of the vision and the problem that you're solving. That is the idea of the entire why question. Identify what you're going to build, how you're going to build, what you're going to build, why, problem, pain point, and then value. So that is the first step for any agile development. After you have identified this using whatever mechanism you want to use, lean canvas, empathy mapping, stakeholder interviews, whatever methods, you will have to start looking at defining what everybody calls as the epic, which is the top line story of this particular the MVP, the minimum viable product that you want to actually roll out at the end of the agile development of this particular project. Now, how to turn, so basically what is an epic? Epic is basically how to turn that vision that you got from your why questions into an epic and big blocks of features. What is a big block of feature? Um, let's say you're looking at an e-commerce application development. If you're looking at an e-commerce application development, you would be looking at factors like saying that how does this, if they have come to you, probably the major thing you would want to look at is basically how do you get their customers who are using the e-commerce application to have minimal clicks to get to the end result of the product that they want to buy. Easy checkouts. It could be easy navigation to product categories. It could be how you want to showcase the searchable products or related products. These are things that you will have to then define as a epic, saying that okay, this is what we are adding as a value, because every e-commerce application is the same. What makes e-commerce applications better from or differentiate each e-commerce application from each other is the ease of usability, right? Take an example of Flipkart versus Amazon, whichever things. I'm not biased to any one of those, but I like Amazon because it's easy for me to pick a particular product. Once I pick up a particular product, it gives me the proper appropriate suggestions for what I can buy with this product. And then when I go back to my homepage, it shows me related products that are there. Also, when I do a search, it is easier to search in Amazon compared to Flipkart. I mean, it is not marketing of Amazon, but that's what I feel. If it goes to some other site, Apple has its own e-commerce site, right? I mean, it has got it in India also. It is also very easy to use, but their definition of things are very simple because they have gone from product branding perspective. So you go to, let's say, iPhone, and then you want to buy that iPhone on an Apple site. The items that they show are related to the iPhone. They will not, so for example, they will not show a trackpad or they will not show a magic keyboard in your iPhone scenario, right? But when you go to MacBook, they will show those as the accessories. So these are pointers that you might want to look at when you're defining the epic, right? Then once you have built your epic at the top level, then ask what is the smallest usable, valuable product we can release. You build the epic, you have got the entire story right, then you start breaking it down into smaller to the lowest particular point that you can, right? Once you've identified that, that is your minimum viable product, which you can actually say, I will complete it in a particular cycle of this particular agile development, right? Not the sprint, agile development. You can call it as a phase one, right? So the output from this exercise should be you having a high level roadmap of having an epic in place and the MVP scope. That is the must have features very clearly defined. When you do that, then you have been successful in defining an epic and the MVP, right? So most people would say minimum viable thing. I sort of call it as must have features. That is what my MVP is. Some people say that in a different term, but what I have to for sure deliver. If I don't deliver, even if there are 5 pointers in that, even if I don't deliver one part, the entire application fails. That is how I define my MVP. Once you have got to this, then you start breaking down into your user stories. Basically saying that, okay, I have got my lowest feature, that is basically my must have features. Once you have got that, you start breaking it down into smaller user stories. Example, as a customer, I want to reset my password so I don't want to lose my access. This is a must have feature. Very simple thing. It's a must have feature. When you're defining this, you probably also have to define the following. You have to define the acceptance criteria. When I finish this feature, how do I accept that this is done, completed, and ready to roll out? Definition of done. What does it mean by this feature is done? Okay, it is as simple as saying that when I click on it, there should be an email going to that particular person in his email account or wherever. He should be able to click on that link, come back into the application, and then reset his password. And then you have to define what is the priority of this user story. This can be done by putting story points. That is one of the ways of handling it. Not just priority, it is just saying that, okay, what is the weight of this particular feature in my MVP? So whichever has got the higher weight gets done first. Whichever have got lower weight goes down. I mean, but this is not always true, but that is how Agile defines it. You can actually play around with that, but at the end of it, your MVP has to be done. The must have features have to go out. That is what is done in the process of defining the user stories. And then once you have defined your user stories, these all will go and sit in something called a backlog. Most of the organizations where you are already working would be doing this. Just to clarify, this is just a concept that I am giving out, which I have been following. You can then map it to your organization's current method of how you are handling it. Or as a young engineer, you can probably understand what and how agile works, right? And as a young manager, probably, right? Okay. So that was it. Yeah. So sprint planning is the next step. When you're defining the sprint, you have already defined all your backlog. Now, each sprint you can probably take it as having setting up a goal for that particular sprint. You can either do a 1 week sprint or a 2 week sprint, depending upon whatever you want to define as a team. During the sprint planning, again, you look at sprint goals. You can also define what done means in that particular sprint. If a user story is set as done, what does that mean? How do we define it as done? Do we mean like, okay, if it's a, and this has to go by feature to feature, right? So every feature, like the example that we talked about, resetting the password, that is a feature, right? So there are 2-3 ways you can do it. One way is simple, saying that you send a link, it goes to the email, you click on that, you reset the password. This is a done scenario. But if you want to add additional security, you might want to say, when you say reset password, I will send you an OTP to your email ID. Okay. And then you put the OTP on the website, then I will send you the link. That's an authentication process. Now, both of them does the same thing, but you are adding a feature saying additional security with the OTP. So in that scenario, you might want to say, even if my OTP part is not done, I'm not sending the OTP, I will still mark it as done. I will roll over this OTP thing as additional security feature in the next sprint. And also, when you're planning, you have to look at the team's capacity. So if you have got 4 people in your team, you look at the story points and see, okay, how many features we can really do in 1 week or 2 week sprint. And that's how you start a sprint. Now, after you have done this, look at your sprint cycle. The sprint cycle, as I had mentioned some time back, is basically defining each sprint. You have to define saying that when will we have the daily stand up, what time we will have the daily stand up, how are we going to do the daily stand up, right? And then you have to do continuous integration testing in each sprint cycle. So each time you complete a particular sprint, there has to be continuous integration and testing so that you ensure that the previous sprint is not broken. That's a concept that you have to bring in into your sprint cycle. One important factor in a sprint cycle I would want to emphasize here: talk daily. Don't make it like just a meeting that is there to be attended. Talk daily, deliver incrementally. Don't try to solve all the problems at one shot, and test constantly, because whatever feature you have built in the previous sprint, because you have added some new features in this sprint, there is a good possibility it will break and it might break. So these three factors are very important when you're building a sprint cycle. The last two steps that are there in this is basically, one is reviews and retrospectives. After every sprint, demo what has been done, get a feedback, retrospect it, and see what went well, what you can improve. Two questions. If your team answers, you can move on with that. What went well in the last sprint and what needs to be improved for us to perform better in the next sprint. When you do the retrospectives, the end result is basically what was the working product, learning that particular feedback for the next sprint. Working product is given out at the end of every sprint. That is the one that is you're reviewing and retrospecting, and you are learning from that feedback, and then you're moving into the next sprint to make it better. Retrospectives and reviews are very important for any agile team. Without this agile, so if there is anything that I would say as critical part of agile to be successful, it is basically reviews and retrospectives, because that is where agile grows with you as a team and as a culture. Correct, right? So agile will grow within the organization, within the team during these retrospectives and reviews, and this is where the teams become really agile or agile centric, right? And once a sprint is finished, only thing that you have to do, and first sprint probably you will not be able to. When you get to the next sprint, you will be able to do it better. First sprint will always be choppy. The second sprint will be a bit more better, right, than the first sprint, and then the third sprint will get better and better, and hence it goes on, right? At some point, it will become a well-oiled machinery, and it will run like that for that particular project or the product development, right? But the most important factor is the rhythm should not be broken. Whatever rhythm you are actually following, that has to be followed. Repeat and then evolve. Repeat what you have done in the previous. So whatever you have done in the previous sprint, at the end of it, you are actually retrospecting and finding out what went well. Repeat it. What needs to be improved, evolve it. As simple as that, right? So every sprint review, you are getting at least two of these questions answered. What went well, what we can improve, and ensure in the next sprint you try to repeat what went well and try to evolve on what you need to improve. Simple, right? Simply said, but implementation is a bit of a complication. That is where the teams become successful. Ensure that you are getting feedback as you're building it, because the more you build and push, the more time it takes to get a feedback. So that's why these two-week sprints are very important. Every 2 weeks, when you're giving it to the product owner, he's reviewing it and immediately giving you back the feedback. Again, after that particular time, when he gives you the feedback, whatever you get, you work on the next sprint or the sprint next to that, because the review might take a week or so. In the meantime, you have built the next thing, right? The next sprint would have started off. So when you get the feedback, you try to incorporate it in the third sprint. The first sprint you build it, second sprint you are moving ahead with the next features, third sprint you go back and look at it whether you want to change something from the first sprint. right? And you move forward with that, because getting feedback will help you in pivoting, improving, and scaling the entire project, right? When whatever you're developing, the feedback that comes in will help you in pivot, improve, and scale. Just remember these three things. These are very important factors when you're doing your repeat and evolve process. Start small, deliver fast, learn continuously. This is a mantra that is there for Agile. Small things you have to build, deliver fast, learn continuously, and this has to be done in a sprint. This is the sprint's mantra, right? Okay, that is how you build the products that matter in a longer period. If you look at it, this is how you build the products that would matter, which will go into production, which will be used by people, and it will solve, at least as I said, some of the pain points and will add some values. If you are building your first Agile project or mentoring a team, or you are just become a part of a Agile team, go look at all the three previous videos and this video, and you would probably get some insight from whatever I have learned in the past 29 years plus, right? And that might help you in building your Agile projects better. The luxury that probably a lot of us didn't have, because these social media channels were not there. So there were very lot lesser people giving out these experiences that they had. That's all from me. This is Menon Thoughts signing off. Until we connect again, keep learning, keep caring.